Fans, welcome to this week's episode of Wrestletalk. Quite a bit to talk about this week. Start out further on the national scene. Raw this week.
I tried to watch it.
Yeah, I did too. I think John tried to watch a little bit of it too.
We may have watched 3 different segments of it.
Yeah, I think so.
None could take long.
I literally, after about 20 minutes of it, just turned it off, popped in disc 3 of the Best of Nitro, which was actually in the last year of Nitro when it was terrible.
Yeah.
But it was still better than what I was watching on Raw.
And that's saying something.
Yeah, I watched Raw for, I don't know if it's about a half hour and saw maybe 3 minutes of wrestling.
Yeah. It's still to the point in 2-hour shows you're getting 20
Honestly,
minutes of wrestling.
it lasts to 5 after 11, 7 after 11.
Mm-hmm.
At 10:38, I believe, Vince McMahon came out to speak, and it lasted the rest of the show. Him and Cena speaking to each other in the ring.
And once again, this is where the problem lies. There's just way too much talk. I mean, it's great to be able to cut a good promo. You know, it's great to be able to get out there and get on the microphone and get the crowd riled.
I mean, to speak so long that you have to have commercial breaks during the middle of your speech, that is just not good at all.
Do you wonder how the live audience feels is when he stops talking while they go on commercial break? He stops talking because they go to commercial.
I want to point this out. They usually do have a couple dark matches before and usually a pretty major main event type dark match after the show. How terrible must it be to pay $30, $50, $80 for a ticket and get that?
Well, the last show we went to, we were in the Skybox at Thompson Bowling, and just being in the Skybox is great.
Yeah, I mean, that was worth $50 right there.
But to be just on the floor and have to put up with that, no.
And there were some actual wrestling matches on that show.
Yeah, there were quite a bit, and
The,
I think there were 2 dark matches before, and
they taped Superstars too.
After, and yeah, it was Superstars and SmackDown. So you got a lot of wrestling in that show.
Actually, did they not tape an episode of ECW that night too?
No, it was the first episode of Superstars.
That's what it was.
ECW was gone at that.
That was at the end of ECW before they brought in that.
No, literally, the first episode of Superstars was taped in Knoxville when the show debuted.
But I mean, I really can't imagine just shelling out my money for that anymore. I mean, to me, I would far rather even pay $10 to go see a decent indie show. Let alone, and there's good indie wrestling here. In fact, if you're in Knoxville on July 30th, get online, look up TXW Wrestling, go to their show. TXW puts on quality entertainment. Menace, the Blackanese assassin, is going to be making his return to that show.
He's an excellent wrestler.
Now, he's wrestled for Combat Zone Wrestling some. He's wrestled mid-level big time, I guess you would call that.
I mean, he's good. He puts on a good show.
Super nice guy, too.
He's great.
And if you support the guys at that level, obviously it's going to make more money for those guys.
Well, he did hyperextend my elbow that one time.
He did.
And the more money those
It was
guys
all
make,
fun.
True.
they're going to be able to bring in some bigger and bigger people.
Well, okay, now there's a show, there's a new group called Awesome Wrestling Entertainment. Now, they got a show coming up in Virginia where the main event's going to be Kevin Nash versus Ricky Morton.
See,
And it's building up into a feud between the Rock and Roll Express and probably Kevin Nash and Xbox, since Scott Hall's bad.
Coked up somewhere, probably.
Yeah. But I mean, those are the shows. I never thought I would say this. There are times I wished I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, Kentucky has had a local independent wrestling show put on every week since 1947 in Louisville.
Wow. I'm not sure if one still goes on in Memphis or not, but
There is.
there's
there
a
is.
huge hotbed of wrestling for so long.
There's some places you can live. Louisville, Kentucky, Memphis, Tennessee, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Tampa, Florida. all have really good stuff going on. There's actually a lot of good independent stuff that goes on in the Northeast New England quarter. I know a guy in New Jersey, Carmine Sevilla, the Stallion. He used to put on a really great show up there. There's some good wrestling going on in Chicago.
So Chicago, from what I hear, has got some good stuff going on the lower local scene.
Now, my good friend Superstar Eric Charles,
One of my nemesis
one of Luke's arch nemesis.
from back in the SECW days.
Now he wrestles shows up there. He recently did a show that featured both Bret Hart and Mick Foley. And it was supposed to feature Tommy Dreamer, but I think there were some transportation issues on Dreamer's end.
So I'm going to assume, I know that Dreamer was released with the WWE. I guess Bret Hart didn't sign a contract.
Bret Hart's under a Legends contract. He can make appearances anywhere but TNA and Ring of Honor, basically.
I'm not sure if Mick Foley...
Mick Foley's released by TNA. There's a lot of talent out there unsigned. I mean, mid-level national talent.
I know the WWE's not really finding it.
No. Now, WWE, I mean, they've even let some good talent go of late.
Well, I was reading an article about WWE and their Ohio Valley Wrestling or whatever it is. They have
Florida Championship Wrestling.
I think they have a program in Ohio too.
They used to have Ohio Valley. It's independent now, I think.
Yeah, from what I read, that PWI, it was still going.
It may be.
And anyway, they were pointing out that just the lack of talent that Ohio has been producing for the WWE since they said that they hadn't produced a star since Randy Orton came out of it and Cena came out of it almost 10 years ago.
Right. I mean,
said that territory's really let the WWE in. That's why I believe that they're still affiliated with it.
They probably are.
See, it was in PWI.
You just don't hear about
that.
Florida Championships where they get all the guys that are on NXT.
They just, it said that the regions weren't working out for WWE. It's like they don't really care that much.
Now,
which that makes sense because WWE is not looking for wrestlers anymore.
They're looking for entertainers.
Right. They're not even finding good entertainers. Yes.
Now I'll say Punk's great.
I like seeing him.
I like Orton.
Yeah.
Big drop off after. Actually, Alberto Del Rio is really good too,
yeah.
And Santino.
Santino's actually not a bad
wrestler. Sin Cara, excellent wrestler.
Excellent wrestler, which surprises me they have him because he doesn't talk.
I'm going to assume he has trouble with English.
I would too.
Yeah, I would say that's good. He may not speak any
English. At the last pay-per-view, Sin Cara wasn't even on the card.
And they brought him in to be this rising star. Also on the local scene, Sean Schultz, another guy. Really love Sean. Sean Schultz is a local guy who's living the dream. He actually makes his living completely off pro wrestling.
Which is an awesome thing to be able to say.
He's got a big match coming up against Bushwhacker Luke.
Well, that should be interesting.
I just assume he's still walking around like this.
That's kind of how he was in Chicago a couple of years ago.
Doesn't change.
When the Honky Tonk Man ripped him off.
What you see in the ring with Bushwhacker Luke, that's just him every day in life.
Yeah, we got to meet Honky Tonk Man and Bushwhacker Luke. Talk a little UT football with Honky. Luke just sitting there, "Oh, Florida Gators!"
Honky Tonk's a big UT fan, and Luke is really a big Florida fan. They conflicted a little.
So that's why I didn't feel bad when I helped Honky Tonk rip off Bushwhacker Luke.
Honky took it was like, man, it's $20 for a picture with me, or it's $20 for a picture with me and the Bushwhacker.
Oh, I'll take that
one. Honky took all the money and ring.
But Bushwhacker Luke had his big gold belt, so he was happy.
Yeah, I had my Tennessee shirt on, and Kevin Nash yelled at me, "Hey, yo, Tennessee Vols" that day too.
It was a good day. I mean, it's. I said, there's just so much talent out there that's just not being used. I don't like the direction WWE is taking. The only good thing they have going for them is their DVD program right now.
And I wonder how long that'll last.
Well, they're going to run out of old programming to put out there soon. In between that and their, that's it. There's only a finite amount of great wrestling from the 80s and 70s that you could put out there.
Well, they haven't bought everyone's libraries yet.
And then it's gone.
Actually, about the only library left out there is Continental.
Yeah, that's all they have.
Oh, well.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from the 80s, they have all the WCW, most of the stuff that was considered NWA was on TV.
Right.
They've got all the world-class stuff. all the AWA stuff, of course, all their old stuff, and they used to actually have some decent wrestling. You know,
I believe
they own a lot of the old Memphis stuff, all the old ECW stuff.
There's some of the stuff that comes on ESPN. I'm not sure if Vince owns that or not.
Well, that's AWA.
Yeah, it's AWA.
It's AWA
Anything that was on ESPN has the right to show.
Okay, Vince may own it then, but just ESPN has the right to show it.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't realize they had AWA.
They do. That cage match collection I bought, it very specific. Well, they have an AWA disc set out, which I'd like to have.
That's probably pretty good. AWA had some good stuff.
On the national scene, Money in the Bank's coming up.
So they tell me.
Also,
They're varying it differently than they have in the last few years. From what
right. Well, first off, there's a Raw Money in the Bank and a SmackDown Money.
Where
in the Bank.
in the past it was one big match. Of course, it was an add-on match to a pay-per-view. It wasn't his own pay-per-view.
It was a WrestleMania match.
It was a Mania match every year.
And
usually one of the better matches at Mania.
right. And so now the SmackDown brand gets one and Raw brand gets their own.
And each match features 8 competitors.
Right.
And
so that's pretty much their entire active roster in 2 matches. So I don't know what the rest.
Well,
of
I mean, you're going to have
the main event: Cena, CM Punk, and
then you'll have
your fire
Christian and Orton, and I'm sure there's at least one other match to make it round out at 5. Probably some awful women's match. Women's wrestling.
There might
so
be a women's Money in the Bank match.
I'm not sure. That would be so.
Well, they only have 4, don't they?
No, they've got quite a
They've
few.
got a lot of them.
Well, I only see 4. I've only seen 4 the last couple times I've watched Raw.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got 2 Bella twins.
You don't see half the roster when you watch Raw or anything because they don't show wrestling anymore.
Point.
But
the last couple times I've seen Raw, they've had a women's match, but it's been the same 4 people.
But
So that's why I just assume there's only 4 of them.
really, I kind of hope John Cena loses the You're Fired match, and also I
Me too.
think he's going to.
There's got to be a movie.
It'll be-
I
he's probably
think it's
fixing to make-
probably going to
maybe
be for a movie.
Maybe he's making the Marine too.
Yeah,
They've already made that.
Oh, my
Starring Ted DiBiase Jr. It was awful.
I'm
bad.
sure
The
he's
first
going
one
to
was
make
terrible.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm pretty sure this was probably a little bit better because it didn't feature John Cena.
You may be
I
right.
do like Ted DiBiase Jr. much better. I actually think DiBiase Jr. is pretty good wrestler.
Rhodes and DiBiase Jr. are great.
But since they've went again doing this whole anti-tag team thing, splitting them up was.
Anytime you get a good tag team, they split it up. I gotta say Morrison's the best wrestler they don't use.
Right. Oh, Miz and Alex Riley is in the Money in the Bank, but that's the best feud on Raw right now.
Yeah.
I like Miz. Never thought I'd say that. And I really like Alex Riley.
Miz is a good character and he's a pretty good wrestler. And I say him and Morrison together in the dirt sheet was the best thing WWE had going for a long time.
Oh yeah, most
They were
definitely.
great commentators too, and they would guest commentate matches. Morrison's really funny. He's a really great wrestler, does great moves. He had the best move at WrestleMania.
Oh,
Where he
definitely.
just did that high kick from down
Definitely.
on the top turnbuckle. Yeah, they don't care. They don't use him.
Yeah. Now, on the local level, coming up, we'll talk some more about that TXW card. We'll talk some about that awesome wrestling entertainment card. And fans, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this segment of sports chat.
Wrestletalk.
You
Wrestletalk.
say that every week. Every week.
Yeah, it's confusing. I mean, it's the same set and everything. But we're going to wrap this up, and we'll be back with segment 2.
It's not the same set at all.